Hi there, my name is Farhania and I just completed my capstone year abroad at Nanjing University for Chinese Flagship. Hopefully this video will answer some questions and concerns that you guys have prior to arriving to China, as well as the internship phase of your capstone year. So without further ado, let's get on into this video. So first things first, pre-arrival need-to-knows. First thing is your visa. Before you can get into China, you need a visa. And because you're going to be studying abroad for 1 year, you need to apply for the X1 student visa. After you've filled out all of your information, including the acceptance letter from the university, as well as your flight information, then you can go over to the consulate. Before you go to the Chinese consulate, double check their consulate hours, because sometimes they're open for 3 hours in the morning and then there's a massive lunch break and then they resume in the afternoon. Sometimes they don't open until the late afternoon for a few hours. So you want to make sure you're not wasting your time going and showing up. If there's no problems, your visa should be issued to you within 2 weeks. The second thing is your flight. So if you are using Chinese Flagship funds to purchase your flight, the main thing you need to know is that you have to abide by the Fly American Air Act. Now what that is, simply put, is you have to depart and arrive on American soil on an American airline. Also, you must purchase your flight and have all the information ready prior to submitting your visa application. So you need to buy your ticket ASAP, and also the earlier you buy it, the cheaper it's going to be. The third thing is your medicals. Make sure you have ample time to get all of your medical shots and tests completed prior to getting to China, because your PPT or your annual exam might have already been expired and you might have to renew something every so amount of years. There's some shots also that need a follow-up 2 weeks or 3 weeks after your first shot. So make sure you don't save that till the last minute. Another thing for medicals, if you're often using Advil, Tylenol, Claritin, any of this Western medicine, make sure you pack that with you in your luggage before you go, because a lot of this Western medicine is not easily accessible in China. You can't just go to Rite Aid or the local pharmacy and expect to find that on the shelves. China does have a lot of herbal medicines and Chinese remedies and all this stuff, but there's not always an equivalent. There's not always an Advil equivalent. So the fourth thing is packing. Don't overpack, because you can buy anything and everything in China for much cheaper. China has the Amazon equivalent called Taobao, and literally you can buy anything on there for a super cheap price. Another tip for packing is do keep all of your important documents on your persons when you travel. Number 5, apps to download. So the first most important app to download is WeChat. WeChat allows you to communicate, video conference, people all over the world and anybody who has the WeChat app, and it's equivalent to China's Facebook and more. On WeChat you're able to purchase tickets, pay your bills, pay your electricity bills, buy, shop, anything. Basically everything all inclusive in one app. You can also tell your friends and family to download WeChat if you don't have a VPN service. Going on to the next app, a VPN service. As you probably know, a lot of social media websites are banned in China. For example, Facebook, Google, YouTube, all of that stuff is non-accessible in China. So, if you want to access those websites, you must purchase a VPN service. What that basically does is reroute your IP address to somewhere else in the world where those apps are not illegal and allows you to go on them. The most common VPN service that my cohort used was ExpressVPN, but there are plenty of other VPN services out there, so feel free to buy one that works for you. And the last one is Zhifubao or Alipay. And it's basically WeChat, just a different means owned by a different company, and it doesn't have the communication aspect where you can text or call somebody. Number 6, money. There are a million options that you can do, but there are 3 that I would highly recommend about money in China. So the first thing you can do is exchange renminbi before you leave America so that you arrive to China with pocket money in hand. The second thing you can do is bring USD and then exchange it in China, either at the airport or at a local bank. However, please keep in mind that there may or may not be exchange rates depending on where you decide to exchange your money. And the third option is you can just use your credit card at a local ATM in China. However, there may also be international fees, so just double check with your bank before you decide on that option. What I would suggest is that you bring enough pocket change with you so that you can cover your taxi cost from the airport to the hotel you'll be staying at for the first few nights until you've located an apartment, enough money to pay for the hotel nights, and enough money to cover food and any sort of travel expenses if you're taking the metro or any of that stuff for the first few days at least, until you have a bank account set up and can wire money into your account then. Number 7, mental preparation. Personally, this may be the most important part of moving to China. First thing is, some things in China just are the way they are. There is no explanation for it, and the only answer really is it's just China. Another thing is hygiene in China. A lot of restrooms in China are squatty potty, so just be prepared for that. Another thing is toilet paper is not always provided. More times than not, it is not. So make sure that you're always bringing toilet paper with you. Soap is also not always provided, so if you can, I'd highly recommend you bring a portable little bottle of hand sanitizer with you everywhere you go. Cuisine in China. Food, oils, spices, the way it's cooked might be a lot different in China than what you're used to in America. Your stomach may not be used to it for the first few weeks or so, so make sure to take it easy. You can buy food anywhere from as cheap as 7 kwai jianbings to 100 kwai hot pot, all of which is delicious. So there's also a whole range of like food and food prices. Another thing as well is coffee. I am an avid coffee drinker. Coffee in China, because it is an import, it is much more expensive. If you drink coffee a lot, you might want to invest in buying a coffee maker and just making coffee by yourself at home. It might be cheaper that way. And the last thing is keeping in touch with friends and family back home. Because you are in a foreign country, it is totally understandable that you will be homesick. It will happen. So just make sure you have that support system back home, whether it be on Facebook or through WeChat. Now you've made it to China, so what's next? Arrival in Nanjing. So upon arriving to the flagship center, you will be handed a few slips of paper. One of those slips of paper will have a list of everything you must complete as soon as possible, preferably within the first week that you're in Nanjing. Those things are opening up a Chinese phone plan, opening up a Chinese bank account, apartment hunting and signing a 6-month lease, taking passport-sized photos, applying for a Nanjing University student ID, taking a physical examination, and registering yourself as an expat living in Nanjing at the PICS or the cohorts, which is also the police station. So, regarding a Chinese phone plan, prior to leaving America, you will want to contact your phone company and let them know that you are going abroad and to unlock your phone. If not, there may be certain instances where if your phone is not unlocked, you will have to buy a new phone in China. Opening up a bank account, you want to get there as soon as possible, as early as possible, right when they open, because otherwise you will be waiting in a line for hours. Apartment hunting in Nanjing might sound extremely nerve-wracking right now. You will give the flagship coordinator range, what you are willing to pay for your monthly rent. When I was in it, we had to pay for our Chinese roommates as well. So the range was between 3,500 kwai a month to 42,000 a month. And if there's a whole bunch of you with that same range, they'll bring you guys all together and hop you from apartment to apartment to check them out. So the things that you want to check out at an apartment before you sign your lease are going to be on a separate sheet that they give you. Some of those things are: does the electricity work? Do you have hot and cold water? Is your aircon hot and cold? Is the gas stove working? Is there anything broken in the house? If there is, make sure it's written in your contract that the landlord will fix it prior to you moving in. Because then otherwise, a lot of landlords would just turn their back the second you give over your money and they just won't fix it. Don't turn away an apartment that you really, really like just because it might be a little bit more expensive than your budget. More times than not, a lot of landlords are willing to negotiate. Also, be very aware, there are some realtors who just want to make a quick buck and make easy commissions. So they'll tell you, for your budget, this is the best that they can find. And a lot of times, those are going to be really, really crappy apartments. Never settle on your first apartment. Make sure you see multiple so you know what you're comparing to. And every apartment that you go to, I would highly recommend you take a video of that, just so that you can remember and go back and think, oh yes, I like this one. Oh yes, no, I didn't like this one so much. Another thing is, after you've signed your lease, you will have to pay 6 months and a deposit in cash to your landlord. So hopefully by then you will have had your bank account set up and money can be wired into it. The next thing is passport-sized photos. So you will need a number of passport-sized photos for several things. So you'll want to take these photos as soon as possible, and there are really cheap stores nearby school that you can get 6, 8, 10 copies for 30 kwai or so. The next one is registering yourself as an expat in the police station. So after you have all of this stuff, your lease, proof of your living address, student ID, acceptance letter, all of that stuff. You'll have to bring all this stuff with you to register at the police station. And the last thing is getting your physical done. It takes max 30 minutes. And you want to get in and out as soon as possible. Now your next phase is your semester in Nanjing studying. So the first thing is classes. You're gonna have to take Flagship mandated courses with other Flagship students, as well as NJU direct enrollment courses. So for Chinese Flagship courses, you have writing, you have media class, and you have a one-to-one optimization class. You also have one-on-ones with a tutor, as well as your teachers. There's also a class every week. It's sort of a culture class where you go on class trips to significant historical locations in Nanjing to learn about the history and the culture of China. For NJU classes, you're gonna have to pangting 1 or 2 direct enrollment courses. Just keep in mind there are 2 campuses. One is the Gulou campus and one is the Xianling campus. There is a 45-minute train ride in between both campuses. So when you look at the options online, make sure you're in the right campus. Otherwise, you're gonna be wasting an hour-and-a-half trip. And then what you can do in the first 2 or 3 weeks, I believe, is go and sit in on these classes before you decide what class you want to take. The next thing is homework. Be prepared to be writing 2 to 3 drafts for each writing assignment before you can physically submit it in, as well as hand write it and submit that in. For the media class, you will have to prep a PowerPoint and give a presentation on what you read the previous week. And for the optimization class, you're going to have to memorize idioms, 成语, and a poem selected by the teacher every single week. You will have to recite it, you memorize it, recite it, and describe / use the idiom or the poem. It might sound like a lot right now, it is, but just make sure you're not falling behind. Give yourself a schedule, nothing gets piled up because it will catch up onto you really quickly. All the teachers are extremely understanding, so if you let them know whatever emergency is happening back home, you need extra time, just let them know. Communication is key. Also, extra credit is always an option. Always ask for jiafen if you need it. Even if you don't need it, just ask for jiafen. And lastly, you will have to write a thesis in Chinese. So the earlier you get started on that, the better it will be, and you won't have to rush it towards the end. Another thing is, I would highly suggest you take advantage of the resources that Flagship offers. Whether they be cultural events, hanging out with the roommates, hanging out with the tutors, and just learning Chinese and being in a Chinese environment. It might suck in the beginning and you want to revert back to speaking English, but you are there for a reason and it's to learn Chinese, so seize the opportunities given to you. So the next phase is the internship phase. Now that you've completed your semester in Nanjing, you will be expected to have found and start an internship in China. There are major cities that you can intern at: Shanghai, Nanjing, Beijing, and if you apply and get approved, other cities are also possible. So you want to get started on finding an internship as soon as possible because class is going to stack up, tutoring hours are going to stack up, 5 hours of tutoring a week is going to stack up, thesis, just your social life, talking back with friends at home, all of this, everything's going to catch up to you because you will also need certain documents from the business company and information Flagship needs to justify and approve your internship. Worst case scenario, if you can't find one, Flagship is more than happy to help you find one. But best case scenario, you find one that you will enjoy yourself. Your internships will also have to require, I think, 80 or 85% or more in Chinese. During my internship as well, we were mandated to take 2 Flagship courses. They were online or on the phone with a Chinese Flagship teacher. And what that is just to make sure that your Chinese is keeping up to par and that you're getting prepared for the OPI when you come back to Nanjing in June or July to take your final OPI exam. Papers that you also have to write, weekly homeworks that you might have to submit to your teacher, things you have to memorize, reading material, all of that stuff. So don't take it lightly as well, make sure you have time for it. While you're at your internship, I would highly suggest you find co-workers, colleagues, or even fellow interns to connect with. So that way you're not just eating lunch by yourself in your little cubicle every single day. Make the most of that situation and you might even get a job, a full-time offer after you complete your internship. Because you are getting school credit for it, you cannot receive a stipend. Unfortunately, that sucks. Trust me, I understand it. but those are Flagship rules. Another thing, for your internship phase, if you do decide to move out of the accommodation that you've been staying at in Nanjing University, you will have to re-register yourself, your address at the police station. And if you move to a different city, you may have to even change your phone plan. And during your internship phase, you'll also have to fill out bi-weekly reports and send those in, and weekly LUR check-ins. So just take a few minutes of your time out of your week and fill those out and send those in as soon as possible, because they will also count towards your grade. So that's basically capstone year in a nutshell. A year goes by so fast, so remember to have fun, but also always keep practicing and learning Chinese any way possible. Hopefully this video addressed some of your questions and concerns. If you have any other questions that you want to get answered, feel free to leave a comment below, give this video a thumbs up, and hit subscribe for more videos. That's it for now. See you guys next time, and good luck in China.